In this video, we'll be taking a look at 4 college basketball games happening on January 9, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 8 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 4 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Miami, Ohio versus Toledo. Miami's run into January has that video game feel to it, and now it walks into Savage Arena, where things usually get very real very fast for visiting teams. 16-0 overall, 4-0 in the league, and suddenly the unbeaten group that everyone was curious about in November has turned into the MAC showpiece that every home crowd wants to knock off. On the other side, Toledo sits at 9-6 and 3-0 in the MAC, which sounds a little ordinary until you remember this program has been living near the top of this conference for years, and does not exactly scare easy when a ranked neighbor walks in wearing all the buzz. Here is the thing: you have 2 very different kinds of belief meeting each other. Miami believes because every night, no matter who is missing, someone new steps up and the offense just keeps humming along, even after losing its starting point guard Evan Ipsaro to that ACL tear. Toledo believes because Savage Arena has seen them handle this matchup over and over in recent seasons, and that kind of history does not just vanish because one opponent is suddenly red hot. If you are a fan in that building, you remember a lot more nights where Toledo walked off smiling in this series than the other way around, and that seeps into the atmosphere. Stylistically, this is a fun contrast for a spread conversation. Miami is comfortable letting the ball zip around, trusting that Brant Byers and that long list of wings and bigs will find good looks without needing a single hero to dominate the ball. They play with a looseness that still somehow looks organized, which is not an easy trick. Even with Ipsaro sidelined, the spacing, the cutting, and the way they share the ball have stayed on script, which tells you the system has real teeth, not just one star guard holding it all together. That matters when you are asking a team to walk into a tough road gym as a small favorite and still play their game instead of shrinking into isolation basketball. Toledo, for its part, has a very real offensive backbone of its own. Sonny Wilson can control tempo, Sean Craig gives them a steady front court anchor, and guys like Leroy Blyden Jr. and Kyler Vanderjagt can take turns being the one who wrecks a defense for a 5-minute stretch. The Rockets are not trying to grind this into some rock fight where they win 30-28. They are much more comfortable trading punches and trusting that their shot making at home holds up. The question for the spread is whether that offense can consistently keep pace with what might be the sharpest, most confident attack in the conference right now, especially with depth being tested and with Chris Riddle out for the year and Austin Parks carrying that questionable tag. When you look at the betting side, the market has already told you plenty. Miami sitting as a tiny road favorite in a building this tough is the odds makers planting a flag and saying, yes, the numbers and the eye test both rate the Redhawks slightly higher even on the road. That is not disrespect toward Toledo, it is more a tip of the cap to a team that has gone 16-0 straight up and 10-3 against the spread and has not really shown the kind of prolonged wobble you usually expect somewhere in that run. They have covered big numbers, short numbers, and those annoying mid-range spreads that usually trip teams up. Toledo has been solid and can absolutely make this uncomfortable, but there is a difference between solid and relentlessly reliable, and right now Miami has been the side that keeps rewarding people who back them. So if you are talking purely about who is more likely to beat a short, one-possession type number, you have one team with the crowd, the history, and a good offense, and another with the cleaner recent profile, the steadier defensive numbers, and the current momentum that just refuses to crack. In that kind of equation, it makes sense to lean into the group that has been cashing tickets all season and has shown it can walk into different environments and still look like itself. As our first pick for this matchup, the Miami, Ohio Redhawks to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. If you just glance at these 2 teams, the first thing that jumps off the page is how often Miami games turn into track meets. They are putting up points in bunches, playing fast, and shooting efficiently enough that even a normal possession count starts to feel like it might not be enough for the opponent to keep up. Their typical night lands in that high-scoring neighborhood where 90+ from the Redhawks and something in the low 70s from their opponents is not some crazy outlier. It is just another entry on the schedule. Toledo is not exactly playing in slow motion either. The Rockets put a lot of pressure on your defense with all those guards and wings who can handle, pass, and shoot. At home, they tend to be even more comfortable pushing the ball after misses, and the supporting cast often looks more confident stepping into threes and attacking closeouts. You know how some teams on their home floor suddenly start taking that early clock three with zero hesitation? Toledo has a little bit of that feel, especially when they get rolling. Put those two profiles together and the picture for the total gets pretty clear. You have a Miami team whose offense has not really slowed down even after losing its starting point guard, which is usually the kind of thing that drags pace and scoring down. Instead, it has looked more like the rest of the roster collectively said, "Fine, we will move the ball even more," and they kept stacking high-scoring wins. On top of that, Miami has been a consistent friend to the over this season, going 10-3 to the over in line games, so odds makers keep inflating these numbers and the Redhawks keep sailing right through them. Toledo's role in this script matters a lot too. They may not be quite as wild as Miami on the scoreboard, but their games still sit comfortably in that upper range rather than in some grinded-out hallway. They give up enough clean looks on the defensive end that it is tough to imagine Miami suddenly stalling out. At the same time, their own offensive talent is good enough that you do not expect many long, empty stretches, especially with their main creators healthy and confident. For a high total, you need both teams to carry their weight, and these two look more than capable of doing exactly that. There is also the endgame factor. With a tight spread, the most likely script late features a close score in the final minutes, which is the perfect recipe for extra possessions, late-game fouls, and those free throws that quietly drag a total higher while everyone is already mentally counting the spread result. A game like this can sit slightly under the number with 4 minutes to go and still fly past it if we get the right mix of timeouts, fouls, and quick shots out of timeouts. Given how both of these teams play and how comfortable they are in up-tempo, offense-friendly environments, it is hard not to see a path where the total gets tested in the final few minutes and then nudged over the top. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Akron versus Bowling Green. Akron walks into the Stroh Center at 11-4-0. Bowling Green is sitting at 11-5-0. And the books have Akron laying about 3.5 points on the road as we are talking about this matchup. Most people see that and think, all right, Akron has been smashing scoreboards, so this is just the better team taking care of business. But when you actually look at how these two groups are playing right now, this feels less like a clear favorite marching to a double-digit win and more like a coin flip that has been priced like a comfy Zips victory. Here's the thing, Akron's offense is loud, no question. They play with real pace, they score in bunches, and they have blown a few teams clean off the floor, so the market has fallen in love with their ceiling pretty quickly. That works both ways though. When a team stacks up huge wins and highlight box scores, the spread starts baking in not just how good they are, but how good people feel about them, and that is where you can quietly get a little bit of value on the other side. Bowling Green is not walking into this as some soft mid-pack MAC team that is just happy to be invited to the party. They are scoring at a high clip themselves, they move the ball, they cut hard, and their offense actually has a structure that holds up when the game speeds up. You watch them for a few possessions, and it is not just one guy going hero ball. It is a system that creates clean looks and keeps pressure on a defense for the entire clock. That kind of style matters when you are catching points, because it means you are not totally dependent on one player having the night of his life just to hang around. And we have already seen their ceiling on a big stage. Going into Manhattan and handling Kansas State by double digits was not a fluke, it was a full game of toughness. They led from the jump, took every push from a Big 12 team, and never really looked rattled. Then they followed that up with that wild 101-100 overtime win at UMass, which tells you this is a group that can take a punch, steady themselves, and still make winning plays late in a high-stress spot. Those two results are not the profile of a harmless home dog. That is the profile of a team that believes it belongs with quality opponents. Now add the building to the mix. The Stroh Center can get loud when there is a reason, and a Friday night national TV game with a high-flying Akron team coming in is a pretty good reason. Bowling Green just came off that thriller at UMass and a tight shootout at Kent State, so the fan base has been given something real to rally around. You give a confident home team that kind of energy behind them, and suddenly every loose ball, every charge, every late-game whistle feels a little heavier for the road favorite. Akron still absolutely has that heavyweight punch. They have a long home win streak, they have been destroying some opponents, and there is always a real risk that they catch fire from deep and just run away from anyone. Honestly, that is the one thing that can make you nervous if you are grabbing the points here. But step back and look at how this specific matchup is likely to feel possession by possession. Bowling Green can score, they have already shown they can stand up physically to high major athletes, and they have lived through tight late-game situations and come out on top. In a high-energy home setting, with that resume, asking Akron not only to win but to clear margin against a confident, fast-scoring host feels a little rich. As our first pick for this matchup, the Bowling Green Falcons to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. The total for this game is sitting around 165.5 points, and honestly, that number looks more like the book finally catching up to who these teams are than the book overreacting. This is the kind of matchup where you do not have to squint very hard to picture both teams living in the 80s, and once you start thinking in those terms, you see pretty quickly why this total is as inflated as it is. Akron has been living in track meet territory for weeks. They were in that 115-100 game against Murray State. They hung 115 again on Concord, and even in more normal wins, they are still landing in score ranges that feel like old-school NBA video game numbers. The important part is not just that they score a lot, it is how they get there. They push the ball, they attack early in the clock, they shoot with confidence, and they do not mind playing in games where both teams trade punches instead of grinding possessions into the late shot clock. Bowling Green is bringing that same kind of let-us race energy. Look at their last 4 results. Totals of 191, 176, that 101-100 overtime classic at UMass, and 189 against Kent State. That is not a random outlier week. That is a pattern. They are comfortable living in games where every trip down the floor can turn into a quick 3 or a downhill drive, and they do not flinch if the opponent keeps scoring too. Here is where it gets interesting. You are not just combining 2 high-scoring offenses, you are combining 2 mindsets that are willing to keep their foot on the gas even when the lead swings. If Akron jumps out in front, they are not suddenly going to run 4 corners and bleed the clock. That is not their personality right now. If Bowling Green falls behind, they are not built to crawl. They are built to keep firing and trust that their pace and shot making will pull them back in. That kind of dynamic is how you end up with long stretches where the game barely takes a breath. Fouls and free throws quietly help this number too. Both teams attack the rim, both teams contest a lot of shots, and in a MAC game with real stakes and real emotion, you usually get a decent whistle. Every trip to the line is free points with the clock stopped, and in a total this high, you want as many of those little 2-point gifts as you can get. Even a couple of foul-heavy stretches on either side of halftime can nudge a game from high scoring into oh wow, this is turning into a shootout. Could this still land under? Sure, if both sides suddenly start clanking open threes, or if one team completely loses its rhythm and the other decides to sit on a lead, you can get stuck. But based on how Akron and Bowling Green have actually been playing, the more honest story is that they have leaned into pace, leaned into offense, and repeatedly pushed their games into totals that would have looked crazy a month ago. When you put those 2 styles on the floor together in a spotlight game, it is hard not to expect the scoreboard to stay hot from opening tip to the final horn. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. USC versus Minnesota. Minnesota gets this one dropped into its lap in a pretty friendly spot, and that matters more than any single matchup detailed tonight. You have a Big Ten winter night in Minneapolis, USC flying in after getting smacked around in back-to-back road games at Michigan and Michigan State, and a Minnesota group that is quietly starting to enjoy being the team that punches first instead of hoping to hang on. USC's story the past week has flipped fast, from Maui buzz and national ranking to questions about what they really are once the crowd is hostile and the whistles are not as kind, and that wobble shows up in both the scoreboard and the body language when teams dig into them in the half-court. Minnesota, on the other hand, has done the one thing you want from a team that is still figuring itself out. They have turned their own building into a comfort zone, stacking home wins, feeding off that old barn noise, and letting the confidence from those blowouts over Texas Southern and Campbell spill directly into Big Ten play, and that upset of ranked Iowa. You can feel the contrast in how these two handle adversity right now. Minnesota bends, calls a timeout, then comes back with a set that gets a clean look, while USC has lately been the team that sees one bad stretch snowball into a full half getting away from them, and that is not the mindset you want when you walk into a true road environment where the home side has not lost there yet this season. Layer on the personnel situation, where USC's guard room is patched together after multiple long-term injuries and a mid-season backcourt addition, while Minnesota has its own losses, but also a clearer pecking order now with the ball in the hands of guys who actually fit together, and it really starts to feel like the kind of spot where the home favorite does not just sneak by. They lean into their edge and make USC play from behind most of the night. As our first pick for this matchup, the Minnesota Golden Gophers to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Minnesota at home has started to play with a freedom that shows up in actual point explosions, not just pretty ball movement. They hung 89 on Texas Southern, 78 on Campbell, piled up assists, and you can tell they enjoy pushing the ball ahead and hunting early rhythm shots when the crowd is buzzing behind them. USC, even with the injuries and the ugly road losses, is still built more like a team that wants to run toward problems instead of away from them. They like to get downhill, live at the rim, and if they are chasing a game again, you can expect more quick shots, more transition, and, honestly, more chances for Minnesota to score on broken floors after misses and turnovers. Recent results also give this a bit of that pressure cooker feel on USC's side. Their defense has just allowed 96 and 80 in back-to-back outings, so the natural coaching reaction is to demand more intensity, but in practice that often means more fouling, more trapping, more gambling, and those are exactly the ingredients that add free throws, extra possessions, and late-game scoring when a trailing team has to extend the game. Minnesota's own defense is not some turn-the-lights-out, walk-away unit either. They are better and tougher, sure, but their strength is more about making enough plays while letting their offense carry the mood in the building. So if this one follows the likely script with the Gophers comfortable, USC scrambling, and both sides getting plenty of clean looks plus whistles, it lines up far more as a game that breathes on the scoreboard than a grind that dies in the mud. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. UNLV versus Colorado State. You have a Friday night game in Fort Collins, UNLV coming in at 7-7 and Colorado State at 10-5. Both teams a little bruised by conference play and both needing a response game. It is one of those spots where the records look fine on paper, but the emotional temperature is very different. UNLV just got hammered at Wyoming, never really in the game, and that kind of loss tends to linger a bit on a plane ride and in a film room. Colorado State, on the other hand, has taken its lumps against some quality teams, but those losses have mostly poked at their flaws rather than exposed some fatal flaw. And all of this is set at Moby Arena, sitting up near 5,000 feet, where visiting legs usually find out in the second half that oxygen is not a suggestion, it is a requirement. Here is the thing. Colorado State under a first-year head coach has leaned hard into an identity built on spacing, ball movement, and decision-making rather than just giving the ball to one guy and getting out of the way. They share the ball at a rate that sits among the best in the country, consistently piling up assists and making defenses guard side to side before the shot even goes up. That kind of style wears on opponents mentally because every possession feels like a test, and it wears on them physically because you keep chasing shooters, cutters, and screeners through possession after possession. Even without leading scorer Kyle Jorgensen, who is confirmed out after that knee injury against Utah State, and is expected to miss multiple games into January, the Rams have not turned into a one-dimensional group. They still have a trio of double-figure guys in that core of guards and wings like Josh Pasquarelli, Brandon Rechsteiner, and Kerry Booth, all firmly on the current roster, all active as of the latest reports, and all trusted in this system. The front court is not at full strength with Jorgensen sidelined and Rashaan Mbemba still coming up on injury reports as day-to-day and questionable, but Colorado State has already been living with that reality for a couple of games, so it is not some brand new shock to the rotation. Now flip it to UNLV. The Rebels do not walk into this game healthy or settled. Guard Miles Che, a key perimeter piece, remains out long-term with a foot issue and is not expected back for this one. Ladji Dembele has been dealing with a foot injury that has already cost him time, and although he has popped back into lineups at points, he keeps appearing in injury notes, so there is at least some uncertainty about how many heavy, high-quality minutes he can give. Jacob Benarby has also been working through a calf problem that kept him out of multiple games, and while his long-term outlook is better, depth bigs coming off soft tissue injuries are rarely the picture of reliability in an altitude game. You stack that with the fact that the Rebels just had their confidence smacked around in Laramie, and you get a roster that is not only a little thin but also a bit mentally fragile heading into another road test. From a style standpoint, the clash is pretty clear. Colorado State wants to move you around, touch the paint, spray the ball out, and trust that enough trips will end with a clean three or a trip to the line. They lead the Mountain West in three-point percentage and free throw percentage, so they are not just firing away, they are cashing in when they get there. UNLV, by contrast, has put together a profile where the offense is respectable, even dangerous at times, but the defense gives back a lot of what the offense earns. They are scoring close to 80 points per game but allowing more than 77, which puts them in that bottom chunk of Division I in points allowed per game. Advanced numbers have their defensive efficiency sitting in the back half of the country, which matches what you see on film. Some energy, some length, but too many breakdowns and too many easy looks given up over 40 minutes. In a neutral gym, that can be masked for stretches, but on the road, against a well-organized offense that loves to share the ball, those cracks tend to widen. There is also the altitude factor, which is not just a talking point for broadcasters looking to fill time. Playing almost a mile up changes how legs feel in that under 8 timeout of the second half. If your rotation is even a little shorter because of injuries or foul trouble, those last 6 or 7 minutes feel like running on a treadmill you cannot turn off. Colorado State knows exactly how to use that. They do not have to press full court to make you tired. They just keep running their stuff, forcing you to defend multiple actions per trip. And if you are a step late, that is when the threes and back cuts start to stack up. So when you put it all together, you get a pretty familiar Mountain West picture. A sharpshooting home favorite that shares the ball, understands its own building, and has already been operating without its injured star, facing a road underdog that is banged up, just got humbled, and has a defense that already leaks points. Motivation runs on both sides, but structure and environment lean toward the Rams gradually pulling away as the game wears on, especially if UNLV has to lean heavy minutes on a few core guys because of those injury questions. As our first pick for this matchup, the Colorado State Rams to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. On the scoring side, this matchup has a very different feel. You are looking at two teams that, for different reasons, tend to live in higher scoring environments. Colorado State is sitting at 81.8 points per game on offense and giving up 72.4, which is already nudging you toward totals in the mid-150s before you even account for game flow. UNLV is at 79.6 scored and 77.3 allowed, so their games are practically shouting fireworks from the box score. When both teams are living in that zone, it is hard not to picture a box score with a lot of crooked numbers in each column. Let me explain why that matters here. Colorado State's offense is not a random hot streak that is due to fall off a cliff. It is backed by real structure and real numbers. They sit in the national top tier in offensive efficiency, with metrics that put them around the top 25 in the country in points per possession. Their assist rate sits in that elite band as well, and the game notes back that up with a huge percentage of made field goals coming off a pass, which means a lot of their shots are in-rhythm looks. That is the sort of thing that usually holds up even when you play better defenses. UNLV is not one of those better defenses. We have already seen what this Colorado State offense can do in a free-flowing game, like that rivalry shootout with Colorado where they dropped 91 points and hit 18 threes. That night was the extreme version, but it tells you what the ceiling looks like when they get comfortable at home, see the ball go through the net early, and the crowd starts buzzing. Even on an average night, this is a team that can live in the mid to high 70s without anything too special happening. And that is before you add the bonus of a tired or foul-ridden defense on the other side. UNLV, for its part, has a style that quietly helps overs along. They are more of a chaos team, capable of heating up and scoring in bunches, but also a bit reckless on defense, which leads to fouls, rotations that are half a beat late, and opponents getting easy trips to the stripe. They have multiple players who are comfortable hunting their own shot, and when they get going, they can turn what looks like a comfortable margin for someone into a quick 10-point swing. That volatility is bad for coaches' blood pressure, but it is very friendly for a total because it keeps both teams attacking instead of just trading low possession, grinded out sets. Another piece here is how both offenses like to score. Colorado State is leading the Mountain West in three-point percentage and free throw percentage, and UNLV's defensive profile does not scream lockdown on the arc. You are talking about a game where made threes and free throws are likely to be a big chunk of the scoring. Threes are efficient, free throws stop the clock, and both are over bettors' best friends. If the whistle is even moderately active, you can see long stretches where the scoreboard moves while the game clock barely does. Now, could this still get weird? Sure, all it takes is one team coming out ice cold from 3 or a referee crew deciding to let everything go for a while, and suddenly you are staring at a game in the low 40s instead of something more explosive. But if you use the current season numbers, the offensive efficiency rankings, and the way both teams have been trending, the most natural script looks like a game that lands somewhere in that mid-150s neighborhood, the sort of 78-74 type of final that feels very normal for these two. It does not require a track meet, just both offenses being themselves and neither defense suddenly turning into a wall. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.